went downstairs? Or
No, I stayed there. I'd fallen asleep there, and I stayed there. And I was going to get ready and come home later that day and pack to go on the tour.
And then when did you see him next?
That was when I walked in. I noticed, of course, he'd been in there for some time.
Elvis Presley passed away in August 1977. 6 months earlier, he had proposed to 20-year-old Ginger Alden. A lot of people close to Elvis have given their different views on Elvis and Ginger relationship, but for many years, there were never anything heard from Ginger. This year, Ginger Alden finally spoke in an interview. In this video, we delve into Ginger Alden recount on her fiancé, Elvis Presley. The meeting with Elvis, the life-changing encounter. Ginger Alden was a 20-year-old model and actress living in Memphis, Tennessee, when her life took a turn that would intertwine her fate with that of the king of rock and roll. Born on November 13, 1956, Ginger had grown up in a family with connections to the entertainment industry. Her father, Walter Alden, was a public relations officer in the U.S. Army, and her sister Terry was the reigning Miss Tennessee at the time. Ginger's first encounter with Elvis Presley occurred when she was just 5 years old. Her father had been stationed in Germany during Elvis's military service, and their families met through mutual connections. Ginger recalled that Elvis was kind and cordial, patting her on the head during their brief interaction. Years later, in November 1976, Ginger's sister Terry received an invitation from George Klein, a close friend of Elvis, to visit Graceland. Terry, feeling awkward about going alone, invited Ginger to accompany her. This visit marked the beginning of their renewed connection. Elvis greeted them warmly, and Ginger was struck by his charm and charisma. As they arrived, Ginger was filled with a mix of excitement and nervousness. She had grown up in Memphis and had seen Elvis perform many times, but this was different. This was the night she would meet the king of rock and roll. Elvis greeted them warmly, his presence as commanding as ever. He led them inside, showing them the rooms filled with gold records, costumes, and personal mementos. Ginger was in awe, trying to take it all in. But what struck her most was how kind and genuine Elvis was. He wasn't the distant superstar she had imagined. He was just a man, sharing his home with guests. After the tour, Elvis invited them to stay for a while. He played the piano and even performed a few songs just for them. Ginger recalls feeling as though she had stepped into a dream. She was in Graceland, alone with Elvis Presley, experiencing a side of him that few ever had the chance to see. As the evening wore on, Elvis took a particular interest in Ginger. He asked her about her life, her dreams, and her thoughts. She was surprised by his attentiveness and the depth of their conversation. It was clear that he was genuinely interested in getting to know her. The night ended with Elvis walking them to their car, thanking them for visiting. Ginger left Graceland that evening with a sense of wonder and a heart full of memories. Little did she know this was just the beginning of a relationship that would change her life forever. Journey to the engagement to the king. After their initial meeting, Elvis began reaching out to Ginger. He invited her to join him on his tour, and they spent more time together. Ginger was captivated by Elvis's warmth and attentiveness. He shared his thoughts on spirituality, reading passages from books like Khalil Gibran's The Prophet, and discussing his interest in Eastern religions. Their relationship deepened quickly. Ginger was introduced to Elvis's inner circle, and she became a constant presence in his life. Despite the whirlwind nature of their romance, Ginger felt a genuine connection with Elvis. She described him as someone who was deeply thoughtful and caring, qualities that endeared him to her. By early 1977, just months into their relationship, Elvis proposed to Ginger. He presented her with a diamond engagement ring, crafted from the large diamond in his TCB ring. The proposal was a testament to his commitment and love for her. They planned to marry on Christmas Day of that year, a date that held special significance for both. Tragically, on August 16, 1977, just days after their engagement, Elvis passed away unexpectedly at Graceland. Ginger was the one who found him unresponsive in his bathroom, a moment that profoundly impacted her. She later described the experience as surreal, unable to comprehend the loss of the man she had planned to marry. The public scrutiny following Elvis Presley's death. Ginger Alden's life changed dramatically after the sudden death of her fiancé, Elvis Presley, on August 16, 1977. On that fateful afternoon, Ginger discovered Elvis unresponsive in his bathroom at Graceland. Her immediate reaction was to call for help, but despite efforts to revive him, Elvis was pronounced dead at 3:30 p.m. This moment, while deeply personal, became public knowledge, and Ginger's role in finding Elvis was widely reported. Some media outlets questioned her actions, speculating about the events leading up to his death, despite the official cause being heart failure. At just 21 years old, she found herself thrust into the public eye, facing intense media scrutiny and negative commentary that would follow her for years. In the days following Elvis's death, tabloids and news outlets began to sensationalize every aspect of Ginger's life. She was often portrayed as the young fiancée who had entered Elvis's life quickly. Comparisons to Priscilla Presley, Elvis's ex-wife, were frequent, with some insinuating that Ginger was replacing Priscilla too soon after the divorce. This narrative was not only unfair, but also overlooked the genuine affection between Ginger and Elvis. As time passed, Ginger continued to face criticism from certain quarters. Some members of Elvis's inner circle, including bodyguard Dick Grob and cousin Billy Smith, expressed skepticism about her relationship with Elvis. They questioned her motives and suggested that she might not have had Elvis's best interests at heart. Some claim she never really loved Elvis. Ginger was one of the worst choices Elvis ever made. She was always disappointing him. She didn't love him. She didn't even want to be around him. She wouldn't move into Graceland. She didn't like to spend the night, and she didn't want to go on all the tours. She didn't seem interested in pleasing him much at all. Ginger probably added to Elvis's downfall. She didn't care anything about him. Someone said Ginger Alden was not working out. She complained, and her mother was always hanging around, hoping Elvis would give her something. He did give gifts to Ginger's family, fur coats, new cars, because Joe was always hinting. She learned quickly that all they had to do was hint. "Oh, my husband's car isn't running right," Mrs. Alden sighed, and Elvis gave her a new car. I assumed she was telling Ginger to stick with him so they could get all these presents. A house staff was recalled saying, "Now both Ginger and her mama deny this." But see, she knew this Jim Kirk, who was a freelance writer and a stringer for the Enquirer. But now we're pretty sure that's how the Enquirer had people flying in here on August 16th, taking pictures and making phone calls 3 hours before the hospital announced Elvis was dead. We do know for sure that by the time Ginger called Al up there, she was all dressed and made up to perfection. She sure didn't look like she just rolled out of bed, like she said. If she did deal with the Enquirer, she probably figured, well, what have I got to lose? He's dead. We guess she called him twice and struck a deal with him for her story and a page one fee for $105,000. These opinions, while not universally held, contributed to a public perception that was less than favorable. After years of silence, Ginger Alden finally speaks up. For 37 years, Ginger Alden never spoke anything about her relationship with Elvis Presley, nor the public scrutiny following his death, but in 2014, she released a book, Elvis and Ginger. In August 2025, she spoke in an interview. Ginger Alden paints a picture of Elvis Presley far beyond the flashing lights, screaming fans, and glittering costumes. While the world saw the king of rock and roll as a larger-than-life figure, Ginger experienced a more intimate, human side of him, a man quietly searching for meaning and connection amid fame and fortune. From the very beginning of their relationship, Ginger noticed Elvis's introspective nature. Despite the grandeur of Graceland and the constant attention from the media, Elvis often retreated into moments of reflection. He loved to sit quietly with Ginger, sometimes at his piano or in the lush gardens of his estate, speaking softly about things that mattered deeply to him. He was fascinated by spirituality, philosophy, and the mysteries of life, often quoting passages from books or sharing thoughts that revealed a mind constantly questioning and searching. One of Ginger's vivid memories is of evenings when Elvis would read aloud from books on Eastern philosophy, particularly texts exploring Buddhism and Hinduism. He found comfort in ideas that transcended the material world, discussing with her the meaning of existence, the nature of the soul, and the idea of karma. Ginger recalls being struck by his sincerity. He wasn't merely interested in appearing cultured or enlightened. He genuinely sought answers that eluded him in the chaos of his life. Elvis also had a deep, almost childlike fascination with history and literature. He would often reflect on the lives of people who had changed the world, comparing their struggles to his own. Ginger remembered one night when they spoke for hours about the loneliness that comes with fame, the pressure of being the king, and the responsibility he felt toward his fans. He admitted that while his career brought him incredible joy, it also carried a profound sense of isolation, a truth that few outside of his closest circle truly understood. Beyond his intellectual pursuits, Elvis's emotional depth stood out. He was deeply empathetic and could sense the feelings of those around him. Ginger often described him as someone who felt the weight of the world in personal ways. When friends or family were struggling, he would take it to heart. He had a natural instinct to protect and nurture, which he extended to Ginger, often expressing his care in subtle, thoughtful ways. Simple gestures, a note left in her room, a quiet conversation late at night, revealed a man capable of tenderness and vulnerability that the public rarely saw. Elvis's interest in religion and spirituality was intertwined with his lifelong quest for happiness and contentment. He meditated, reflected on his actions, and often pondered how to lead a meaningful life despite the pressures of fame. Ginger recalls moments when he would share dreams of a simpler life, where music and love, not fame and money, defined his days. These glimpses behind the curtain showed Ginger a man struggling with his own humanity, a man who, despite his superstar status, sought ordinary joys and peace of mind. The different side of Elvis unknown to the public. Her story qualifies as the best existing narrative of the final 9 months of Presley's life. She was clearly the closest person to Elvis during that period. Ginger obviously wanted the focus on her love affair with Elvis, but along the way, her observations reveal Elvis to have been a troubled soul, desperately trying to escape self-imposed isolation during those final months. Although many professional and personal issues troubled Elvis in the last year of his life, only some of the larger ones are mentioned here. Here are some of the larger ongoing concerns in his life at that time that Ginger addresses in her book. Elvis struggled to keep control. Dating back to when fame first overwhelmed him, Elvis Presley steadfastly sought to control his private life and all the people who entered his inner circle. The Elvis that Ginger Alden knew struggled mightily to continue that control. She became aware of it the day after they first met. When Elvis revealed that he owned a Ferrari, she asked if they could go for a ride in it. "Not now," she says he replied. "I'll decide when we take a ride in it." Ginger wondered if Elvis wanted her to know early on that he liked to be in control. Later that day, Elvis gave her a gold ID bracelet with Elvis spelled out on it in diamonds. "Now everyone will know you belong to me," he explained. As he had with Linda Thompson during the 4 previous years, Elvis nearly always wanted Ginger by his side. He insisted that she stop seeing anyone else, even going so far as to hand her a telephone and asking her to call the young man she had dating and end their relationship. It was just one of many examples Ginger gives of Elvis trying to control her behavior. Her resistance then, and at other times, caused Elvis considerable irritation. Ginger also observed Elvis's difficulties trying to control the men who worked for him. Long-trusted friends Marty Lacker and Joe Esposito then lived in California and were seldom around, and Ginger couldn't figure out what Lamar Fike did for Elvis. Charlie Hodge was still there, but Elvis was losing patience with his old friend. When, after drinking too much, Charlie smashed his hand through a glass window, Ginger says Elvis got angry. "I'm sick of this shit," Elvis told her. "There's gonna be changes around here." And when Elvis fell on the stairs coming off stage in Milwaukee, he told Ginger, "People just aren't doing their jobs. I'm getting rid of Dick, Joe, and whole lot more." Later, when Elvis told Ginger he felt lonely at Graceland, she reminded him of all the people he had around him. "They're not my friends," he responded. "Do you think if it weren't for their paychecks, they'd still be around?" Elvis struggled with insomnia, particularly in the last years of his life. Ginger recalls that he often had trouble sleeping despite exhaustion from tours, recordings, and performing. This lack of rest contributed to his fatigue and sometimes affected his mood and energy levels. According to Ginger, he would try various remedies ranging from meditation to herbal teas to help him relax, but restful sleep was elusive. Elvis was also coping with the physical demands of his career-long tours, intense performance schedules, and the strain of maintaining his image. Ginger emphasizes that beyond the medications, there was emotional strain as well. He was deeply aware of his public persona and the expectations of fans, which sometimes left him feeling isolated and under pressure. Elvis gave Ginger an endless stream of gifts. Elvis may have been trying to bring Ginger under his spell with an endless stream of expensive gifts. In addition to the already mentioned diamond ID bracelet, the amount of jewelry he gave her in 9 months' time was staggering. There were the rings, a gold and diamond cluster ring, one with sapphires and diamonds, another set in rubies and diamonds, another diamond cluster ring, and the most magnificent of all, an engagement ring with a huge center diamond surrounded by 6 smaller ones. Then there were the necklaces, a diamond and emerald one, a couple more diamond necklaces, another with TLC spelled out in diamonds, and then what Ginger described as the most singular piece of jewelry I'd ever seen, his own large ram's head necklace in gold, inlaid with diamonds and emeralds. Finally, Elvis gave Ginger a large jewelry box to hold all her jewelry at Graceland. Elvis also gave Ginger a new car, mink coats, and her own credit card. Ginger saw only benevolence in Elvis's serial gift-giving. He saw himself as someone who was in a position to enhance other people's lives by bringing beauty into it, she concluded. He thought that would make them happy. However, whether or not she intended it, in her narrative Ginger leaves the impression that Elvis was attempting with his gifts to make her feel obligated and thus bring her under his control. Maybe so, but his occasional outbursts of temper had the opposite effect. Elvis's hair-trigger temper scared Ginger. The first time Ginger saw Elvis's hair-trigger temper was when she refused to immediately call the man she had been dating and end their relationship. Elvis grabbed a bottle of Gatorade and threw it against the wall. It troubled me that Elvis had flown off the handle like that, she recalls, but then she adds a naive rationalization for it. As odd as this sounds, it also made me feel good to think that Elvis was really that serious about us. She was to find out how dangerous Elvis's anger could be. Weeks later, a deafening bang awoke Ginger one morning at Graceland. I bolted upright and saw Elvis standing at the foot of the bed, holding a .57 Magnum pistol in his hand. I risked a glance behind me and saw a bullet hole in the wall above the headboard. I looked back at Elvis, trying to wrap my mind around the idea that he really had just shot a hole in the wall. By way of explanation, Elvis said he had asked for yogurt again, and I hadn't responded. It was an attention-getter, he said. Although she professed to be in shock and extremely hurt by Elvis's action, Ginger accepted his apology, sensing on a deep level that Elvis honestly was sorry. It wasn't the last time she'd hear gunfire at Graceland. A running toilet in his bathroom so irritated Elvis that he blasted it to smithereens with what Ginger called a machine gun. That time, Ginger's shock turned to anger, she says, and she fled Graceland and ran home to be comforted by her mother. She soon went back to a contrite Elvis, though. While Elvis and Ginger were vacationing in Hawaii in March 1977, Elvis's anger resulted in him doing what Ginger called the inconceivable. It started with an argument between the two because Ginger felt Elvis had been drinking too much juice. When she left the room while Elvis was still talking, he pursued her into an adjoining room and slapped her on side of her body. "No one ever walks out on me when I'm talking," he said. The dark mood had transformed Elvis into someone I didn't recognize, Ginger observed. Still, she forgave him. I could tell by his voice that Elvis was deeply remorseful for having struck me. Ginger was concerned but unable to affect Elvis's medications use. In a San Francisco hotel room in late November 1976, just 10 days after she met Elvis, Ginger saw him swallow the contents of a small yellow packet an aide had brought to their room. "Something to help me sleep," he told her. The next day, another packet was brought to the room for Elvis. It was a mixture of vitamins, medication, sinus pills, and aspirin, he said. Ginger realized these packets were routine, delivered in the same casual manner as the jug of water beside Elvis's bedside. Slowly, Ginger says her awareness of the effects the medications were having on Elvis increased. After watching an aide having to assist Elvis to the bathroom and then back to bed, Ginger says she began to wonder about the yellow packets. "I had no idea what he was taking," she said, "but it seemed quite strong." Watching him on stage one night in December, she noticed Elvis uncharacteristically seemed to be forgetting some of the song lyrics. Could his water pills or any pain medication be affecting his memory, she wondered. She thought it was odd that he needed sleep medication every night, whether he was on tour, at home, or on vacation. Early on, though, she says she trusted Dr. Nikopoulos to monitor Elvis's health. Later, she began to attribute Elvis's bad mood swings to the prescribed medication he'd been taking. She finally summoned up the nerve to confront him about those medications. One morning, as Elvis called for Tish to bring him medication, I told him, "Elvis, you don't really need that." He looked at me and shook his head. "You don't understand," he replied. "I need it." I wondered, not for the first time, if Elvis had built up an immunity to whatever medication he'd been taking on a regular basis, and that's why he needed an increase in dosage. Whatever the case, I could only hope the medical professionals overseeing his care knew what they were doing. 6 months into their relationship, Ginger says she was becoming more concerned about Elvis's use of medications and the long-term effects they might have on him. By now it was the middle of May and getting close to the next tour. As before, Elvis seemed anxious about his upcoming performances. He started again asking for more medication to help him get back to sleep whenever he woke up. I had another concern as well. I wondered if this medication could be harmful to Elvis in the long run. A few times it seemed clear to me that it had affected his mood and behavior in negative ways. Ginger says she told him about her concerns. Any conversation about medication would have to be approached carefully and in time, she concluded. I knew I couldn't change things in one day, but I was determined to keep trying. Apparently, though, she never felt empowered enough to turn her concern into some sort of action designed to reduce his dependence on medications. Ginger tried to help Elvis improve his diet. The yogurt and juice incidents, to which Elvis responded with violent outbursts, were among a number of occasions Ginger says she tried to get Elvis to change his unhealthy diet. Since Elvis had isolated himself in his bedroom, that is where he and Ginger were served their meals. Ginger says that in the 9 months she was with Elvis, she never saw him sitting at a table to eat. Early on in their relationship, Ginger spoke briefly with Priscilla on the phone. "See that he eats right," Priscilla told her, but Ginger quickly learned that was easier said than done. "I was concerned about his health. When it came to mealtimes, Elvis and I enjoyed eating similar things such as hamburgers, steak, and omelets, but I continued to notice certain foods were being brought to Elvis in larger than normal portions. I hoped to move us toward a healthier diet, but I just didn't know how because he was used to getting what he wanted." She says she tried to bring Elvis healthier snacks like fruit, but he only picked at it. Still, Ginger took that as a step in the right direction. Eventually, she thought he was showing more awareness of his diet. He was drinking a lot of water and eating less yogurt. But she made that observation on August 15, 1977. It was too late to reverse decades of poor eating habits. Another bad habit, begun in his Army days 2 decades before, would contribute to the fatal event on the next day. Accidental overdoses became a real danger for Elvis. The peril of an accidental overdose became clear to her one day when a phone call sent her rushing over to Graceland. When she entered Elvis's bedroom, he was on his bed, eyes closed, and hooked up to an IV. Dr. Nikopoulos was sitting at his bedside. Charlie Hodge told Ginger that Elvis had gone to Las Vegas and had taken too much medication. "It crushed me to see him like this," Ginger says, but she remained powerless to do anything about Elvis's unmanaged use of medications. Ginger's depiction of events at Graceland on August 16, 1977, suggests the possibility that another overdose may have contributed to Elvis's death. Ginger observed Elvis take 2 of his sleep packets that morning. The first one he requested was brought up to his bedroom by Ricky Stanley at about 6:45. Still restless, at about 8 o'clock he called down for another packet, which Ricky also brought up. Ginger says she woke up an hour later to see Elvis head to his bathroom to read. She then slept until about 2 p.m. when she awoke and found Elvis's body soon afterwards. Elvis Presley, Days of Love in Graceland. Despite all that transpired, when Ginger Alden was asked to describe her relationship with Elvis Presley, she said she didn't just meet a legend, she discovered a man filled with gentleness, humor, and an eagerness to love deeply. Behind the gleam of Graceland's chandeliers and the whispers of 1,000 fans outside its gates, the king of rock and roll was, at heart, a man who cherished quiet laughter, small surprises, and late-night conversations that lingered long after the music stopped. Their time together was filled with gestures that spoke louder than words. Elvis, though constantly surrounded by people, made Ginger feel as if she were the only one in the room. He would send her sweet notes, tucked between flowers or left on her pillow. Sometimes he would wake her gently just before sunrise to watch the light spread across the lawns of Graceland, saying softly, "You shouldn't miss beauty when it's right outside your window." Elvis had a childlike playfulness that surfaced when the cameras weren't rolling. He loved to joke, to tease, to laugh until his eyes shone. Ginger remembered evenings when they would sit together in his den, watching movies or singing softly to the record spinning nearby. He would strum his guitar, sometimes whispering the lyrics directly to her, not as Elvis Presley the superstar, but as a man in love. What struck Ginger most was his kindness. Elvis was thoughtful in ways few expected. When someone around him was hurting, a staff member, a friend, even a fan who had written him a sad letter, he felt it deeply. He'd often stop what he was doing to make a phone call, offer help, or send a gift. "That's just who he was," Ginger would later write. He cared, sometimes too much, and it weighed on him, but it also made him beautiful. He also took care of her with quiet tenderness. On the road, he made sure she ate well, slept comfortably, and felt protected. He would tell her stories about his childhood in Tupelo, about his mother Gladys, and about the long nights when fame had felt more like a cage than a crown. Yet even in those moments of honesty, he never lost his warmth. He always ended such talks with a joke, a wink, or a squeeze of her hand, his way of saying, "Don't worry, everything's all right." For Ginger, the time they shared wasn't about the wealth or the spotlight. It was about the way he looked at her when he smiled, the way he sang softly when words weren't enough, and the way he reminded her that through all the chaos, that love could still be simple. In the quiet of Graceland, amid laughter and song, Ginger saw the real Elvis, not the icon, but the man. A man who loved deeply, cared completely, and gave all of himself to the people he cherished most. If you enjoyed this video, like and subscribe, and also click the next video shown on your screen.